Final Hour Overdrive continues, powered by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Brian Hayes, Frankie Corrado, Leafs in Seattle tonight. Pierre LeBrun will join us here momentarily. Super Bowl Sunday, rapidly approaching. Dave Naylor will join us from New Orleans a little bit later on. We'll get to our best bets as well. Mitch Marner back in the lineup. Anthony Stolar is back in the lineup tonight. Stolar is making his debut after 8 weeks away from the team.
Yeah. I'm excited for this keeping Max Domi with Auston Matthews and Matthew Nyes thing. He's obviously a valuable part of the team who needs to get going, and it feels like every year we have this conversation where someone's been out because they've been hurt, someone else found a little bit of chemistry, so it's like, you know what? This is a great opportunity for us to spread the wealth a little bit and see if we can build some depth from within. Mm-hmm. But this tells me that it's like, let's keep Max with Auston, because if we get him going, when we have to make a roster decision later, we're not going to be so worried if he's on the third line or the second line or the first line, because he's confident and he's just in his rhythm, and it's not like we're taking him out of a situation that where he's going to lose the head of steam that he had, because he didn't have it in the first place. Now, hopefully, he's going to have it a little bit more playing with Auston.
Yeah, and also Max Pacioretty on the fourth line tonight. Like, Max just is not supplying any offense. Lately,
it's been like 15 games.
Yeah, he hasn't scored. I think he's got one goal in his last 18 games, 20 games. So he's playing on a line with Camp and Lorentz tonight. But I look at it, and I said it earlier, and I agree with you. I think that's very interesting. I thought Max looked good the other night. I thought Domi looked good the other night. It's a big opportunity for him to play with Matthews. They were very good down the stretch last year, and it was a big discussion going into the series against Boston. Do you keep that line intact? Marner had the high ankle injury, I believe it was last year. Is that last year or the year before? I think it was last year. Which led to the formation of that line, and it worked out very well. I could see that being the case come playoff time. I could see that being a scenario where you look at Matthews the same way you looked at Crosby in the past and said, you are the guy, you got to do it here, man. And you're going to have two good players with you that bring different components. Domi's, firebug out there. He's got skill. He's got playmaking ability.
Good wheels, too.
Good wheels. He'll play with some fire. Nyes has got size. He can keep up. Clearly, you guys are comfortable with each other. I could see that being a line. I don't see Tavares, Nylander, Marner being a line. Like, I don't think that's...
interesting one. I don't know if there's enough puck to go around on that line.
No. So what I think is going to happen, if this stays, Domi, Matthews, Nyes, and it's no guarantees it will, but if it does, it'll be Marner, Tavares, and they'll figure out who's going to be on that line with them. And then it's going to be Willie on a third line, quote unquote, probably with Bobby McMahon on the left side. And then who do you have up the middle of the ice?
The centerman that you've acquired at the trade deadline.
Yeah, and I can make a lot of sense of that. And what Nylander has proven is that you can play him with anyone, and his game will be very similar. Like, he's not going to have a lip on. He's not going to say, what do you want me to do out here? I can't do anything without some help. He's going to continue to drive play and offense. And I think Berube would see a lot of value in that. It may not be a conventional third line. It's not going to be one that's overly physical or defensively sound all the time.
I'm not convinced it stays together very long either, because anytime Willie's done this, or they've done this to him where they put him in the third line spot, it's like, yeah, in theory it works and we want it to work, but we're not scoring right now, so he's got to go back up.
Or he didn't play enough minutes tonight. We can't find it.
Right.
So we can't have him playing 15 minutes. We need to find another 3 or 4 minutes for him.
Yeah.
So it complicates things, really, in terms of if you're going to have a top line with Matthews that doesn't feature Marner or Nylander.
Yeah.
If Matthews is going to play without one of those two guys, it complicates the rest of the lineup.
Yeah. I want to see Morgan Rielly have a repeat performance of what he did against Calgary. I thought that was his best game of the year. It looked like he was freed up. And with Rielly, like, every team has this, like a lot of the good teams have this offensive defenseman who's offense first. And it's okay to be that way, right? But everyone else has to kind of react to what that guy does. It shouldn't necessarily be that guy trying to tone it down or simplify it for everyone else's sake. So with that being the case, like, people have to react around Rielly to what he's going to do, and you will get the best version of him. And I thought that was the case in Calgary, and I hope that's the case again tonight for him.
Yeah, he looked great. He really looked great the other night. And like, we were talking about value on this team yesterday, and I think naturally you go to Matthews, then you can debate Nylander and or Marner. I would argue the pairing of Tanev and McCabe have maybe become the most important element of the whole team.
Yeah.
Like, legitimately, if you're talking about a power ranking, Tanev, McCabe as a pairing, I think could be at number one on the list.
For shutdown pairings.
The most important component on the team.
The numbers would agree with you on that.
And his history, right? Like, you need a great pairing. You need defense. It has to happen. Here's Pierre LeBrun, our TSN hockey insider. What's happening, Pierre?
Well, I'm driving, shockingly, Brian. I'm driving to one of my kids' hockey games. The Leaside Flames have a big tilt tonight.
Yes.
So we're on the road and getting ready for that.
Okay,
but,
what rink are we on the way
timing.
to? What rink were we dealing with this afternoon or tonight?
Mark, where are we going again? Oh, Don Mills.
The old
Vic
school
Village?
Civitan.
Yeah.
No, not Vic Village. The Don Mills Civitan.
Oh,
that
I
is
never
where
got there.
the Brian Hayes career was launched.
Oh,
As
Are you serious?
That's where I played when I was like 4 years old, 5 years old. Man, it's one of the. It's
I like that barn.
It's a great barn, great little snack bar over on the side, and so cold, insanely cold. Or it used to be 35 years ago. I can't say. I don't know if it still is, Pierre, but great barn, great barn, Don Mills Civitan. I love it. Awesome.
Yeah,
Connected
man.
to the mall there, the little strip mall there in Don Mills.
I got my toque and my mitts always ready to go because I live in these rinks.
Yep.
And, let's go.
I love it. All right. Go Flames. In terms of, we're talking about the Leafs in Seattle tonight, and Stolar's returning, and Marner's back in the lineup.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's a lot of Four Nations face-off, I guess, concern, anxiety. How would you describe it with what's going to happen with Sid? I guess Marner back tonight, that means he's going to go. He's going to play for Canada. But Quinn Hughes not playing. I don't even think he traveled to San Jose. I don't believe he did.
No.
What's the latest on Hughes, Crosby, Four Nations? Where do we stand on that?
Well, first, just a quick note. You mentioned Stolarz. I love it for him that he gets a game in before the break. Like, I think mentally for a goalie and getting back before the break and getting that in, I think is huge for him. In terms of his approach when he comes out of this break. But, yeah, listen, Quinn Hughes, Greg Talk had said this yesterday, but really within the next 24 to 48 hours, we should know on him. All it depends whether or not he's a go on the weekend for the Canucks. It doesn't sound great right now. I don't want to say for sure that he's out of Four Nations, but I know there's a lot of concern with Team USA, and what a massive loss that would be. But, again, not there yet. They're still waiting to see. But equal concern, of course, with Team Canada because, yes, Sidney Crosby, Team Canada's captain, was on the ice today, but he wasn't in the main practice. Didn't take a lot of shots on the side rink where I was looking at the visuals of him doing some of those drills. And I guess, and Chris Johnson put this best, we just did insider trading, it's sort of the way that everyone connected to the Penguins and to Crosby are guarding the updated information like it's a national secret. That gives you pause a bit. I mean, why is everyone so tight-lipped? And I know one thing. Number 87 is going to do all he can to be in that tournament. I mean, if there's someone that is representative of best on best in the modern era in the game of hockey is Sidney Crosby. He is so excited about this event, genuinely. I traded messages with him last month about having a chance to play with Brad Marchand, Nate McKinnon, his two Nova Scotia pals, that they work out together in the summer. He was so excited by that. So he wants in, and he will do everything he can. But honestly, the key thing is to see what the update is tomorrow. That's what Mike Sullivan said. That's what I know Team Canada's waiting to hear again is tomorrow's update. So we shall see, but I think some pretty nervous moments right now.
So it's natural now that you would have the conversations around who's on the short list if Crosby can't go or if Hughes can't go. Do you have any kind of information as far as who would be, the next couple players up in either of those situations?
Frank Corrado, no.
Not even on my best day, buddy.
Let him in there.
No, not on there. Team Canada's being tight-lipped about that, but if I had to put a wager, I'd say Mark Scheifele at 4. And again, one of the things that you try to do is, like, take, for example, Alex Pietrangelo, who's still not been replaced by Team Canada because they're trying to wait and gather as much information as possible. It's not the way that Don Sweeney described it to me last week. Again, without getting into names, he described their thought process, which is it's not about who the best player is up next as much as the kind of minutes you're trying to replace in the lineup. And so in Petrangelo's case, you're thinking matchup minutes, shutdown minutes, PK. So that's why Drew Doughty, Chris Tanev, Mackenzie Weegar have really been more at the forefront as replacement options compared to Evan Bouchard, who, of course, is an amazing offensive defenseman. But with Kel McCarr likely playing 90% of the power plays for Canada, you understand where Canada's coming from in that thought process. So that's why I think it's one of those guys. So if Crosby can't go, and again, we sure hope that's not the case, but I think Scheifele checks more boxes perhaps than a few other centers. But again, that remains to be seen.
With Pierre LeBrun, our TSN hockey insider, the Habs lost again last night, and they had that great run, and it was all of a sudden you got to keep everyone, and you got to be fair to the guys who are there, and Evans has got to stay, and Savard's got to stay, and you got to push for the playoffs, and it's in the best interest of the culture and team building, et cetera, et cetera. Now they fall off, and now it feels like maybe that ship has sailed. Where do we stand with Montreal as we move forward here in their plans in terms of leading up to the trade deadline, and just in general what they maybe expect the rest of the way?
Yeah, pretty timely question, I think. And just quickly, I forgot to answer Frank's second part of his question about Team USA. If Quinn Hughes can't go, I think Jake Sanderson of the Ottawa Senators will be tapped. Yeah.
Okay, he's been a lot better lately. He's been really good. Okay, go on.
If Quinn can't go. I think the Habs realize now, I think this was seen internally as a pretty big road trip that they just completed in California. Didn't go very well. I think that the Habs will come out of this break as sellers. The best case scenario for them, had they maintained their pace that they had through the holidays and beyond, was that their version of buying was that they would have kept all their pending UFAs, right? Jake Evans, Yoel Armia, Christian Dvorak, David Savard. I think now internally the idea is to come out here and tell teams, come and bid on these guys. That's the reality of the situation. It doesn't mean they'll trade them all. I don't think that's the case. I mean, they got so many darn draft picks already that getting a fifth-round pick for one of those guys isn't going to move the needle for Montreal. It really has to be step up and be real if you want to try and acquire Jake Evans or Yoel Armia. Both of them, by the way, have been terrific penalty killers all year for the Habs. So I think that's where it's at. And the reality, Brian, to fully answer your question on them, is that my sense of the situation is that even when they were playing a real high level of hockey and got everyone excited in their market, Ken Hughes and Jeff Gordon never really lost their eye off the ball, which is that it's so much more about past this season for them, the longer-term vision, which is why if they were going to do anything big at this deadline, regardless of where they were in the standings, it was absolutely going to be in a hockey deal form where it's a player that's with them past this year. And that was going to be the case, and still could be, by the way. But this year's success or lack of was not really going to dramatically influence their moves for March 7th, and that hasn't changed today.
Would there be any concern there about the year that Juraj Slafkovsky is having? Because he's not exactly on pace to exceed last year. I think he's on pace for 45 points this year. He's not going to score as many goals unless he has a really big, stretch run here. Like, would they have been concerned about this, or were they under the impression that it was never going to be linear for him, and they may have expected, an up year, a down year, as he kind of progressed in his career?
Yeah, I know you do a lot of their games, Frank. I mean, I don't think there's a high level of concern. I think that earlier in the season, they were probably a little more concerned than they are now. I think they'd like him to shoot more, but to your point, I think they always thought that it would be, let's be patient with this guy as a power forward, as you often see with guys. And again, remember how young he is. And so, he's continues to keep that job on their top line. He wouldn't have it if Marty Sealy didn't think he should still be there, believe me. So I think they're okay with how it's gone, but it certainly hasn't been completely smooth all year, let's be real. There's more offense there, and again, I think they really wish he would shoot more, and that doesn't happen enough.
With Pierre LeBrun, our TSN hockey insider, in terms of, where we've been talking a lot about Connor Bedard today, And he played, obviously, a primetime game with McDavid and the Oilers in town, and Edmonton ends up beating them in overtime. And everyone's got a different viewpoint on where he is, what he's growing towards, what the team's going to do. Chicago, like they're confusing to me because they fired their head coach, and their GM, Kyle Davidson, came out and said the reason we fired him is because we believe we're better than this. Obviously, he was wrong on that based on the way they've played and the way things have played out. But you see this in other sports where young superstars, there's this concern, like at some point that guy's going to get really pissed off with what's going on and maybe demand some help. How do you see the Bedard-Blackhawk relationship moving forward, considering year 2, it's not going well, and he really doesn't have much help there?
Well, I would say that's certainly part of the reason why there was a coaching change. I would say that this is a pretty important offseason for the organization from that vantage point in terms of assembling more parts around him. I will say that they do have a lot coming in their pipeline, which naturally you would hope, given all the picks they've had the last few years, but they are pretty well positioned in terms of what's coming. And so there has to be a bit of patience there, Brian. But, the reality is it probably hasn't ascended as quickly as Connor Bedard himself would have wanted. Now, I do think he's playing a lot better now than he was at the start of the year. But there isn't that much around him. And so, that has to be accentuated this offseason for sure. And I think there'll be pressure there to do that. One of the interesting things to me about seeing how this season has played out for Chicago is that, I only bring this up because I remember being in the middle of that reporting at the draft in Vegas last June, but, Chicago offered their 2025 first-round pick unprotected to Columbus for the 4th overall pick, and the Blue Jackets declined it at the time. I believe the offer was made to another team in the top 5 as well, but, the Hawks could end up with the first pick overall here again, and so looking back in hindsight, I mean, it's easy to do for anyone, but probably fortunate in some ways that trade didn't go through, I would say, given where they are now.
Well, and they also passed on Demidov, did they not? Like when you're building towards the future, you look at Crosby had Malkin, McKinnon has had Rantanen, McDavid, Draisaitl. It's like you could have had a situation where you had Bedard, Demidov together for, the foreseeable future. That would have been a nice little combination. Montreal's pretty happy to have that guy.
Well, and I think who knows what they were. I don't know who they were thinking of picking had they been able to pick twice in the top 5, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's to your point, Frank. So, yeah, it's always interesting to look at that. But yeah, I mean, listen, I think that, not that the Sharks are any higher in the standings than the Blackhawks, but San Jose's rebuild, started after Chicago's. And, it's really amazing to me how Macklin Celebrini has looked at his rookie year. I mean, I've had a couple of front office people from around the league tell me that they look at where he is at his young age and see the way that a young Jonathan Toews meets Sidney Crosby type hybrid setup there in terms of Celebrini's approach over 200 feet to his game. I mean, that's some unbelievable praise and from other teams. So I guess what I'm saying is, you're always going to be compared to perhaps what other teams are up to similar to you. And right now, I still think Chicago is going to figure this out. But right now, I'd say San Jose's probably feeling better about where they are in their rebuild.
Yeah, and they should. And, they get an elite centerman who's going to be the franchise guy for a long time. And, there's a team right now in the Eastern Conference that is missing 2 significant centermen, and that would be the Ottawa Senators, Josh Norris, Shane Pinto. And they're 3rd in the Atlantic, but, Detroit's chasing them down. They're 1 point back. Tampa's 2 points back. We know that it doesn't necessarily go well for them when they don't have Stützle into Norris, into Pinto. How worried should the Sens be, and would they maybe try and get ahead of this, and try and bridge the gap here between those guys coming back to now?
Yeah, they were already making calls before all that for a top 9 forward. Brandon Tannen's name has been out there from Seattle, and a few other guys that the Senators I know have checked in on. So I think they would like to add, regardless of what's happened injury-wise. I would also tell you 2 things. One is that Steve Stais, if you're going to read his very early career resume as a GM. He's only been a GM for 2 years now. He's not showing any panic at all. He has really weathered the storm through some tough moments already since taking over. You know, one of them was when Ullmark went down, and everyone was clamoring for him, where a lot of people were to go trade for a goalie, and he truly believed they could get through with what they had in the organization. He was proven right, and I think that's an important trait, because I think it's a lot easier to panic trade than it is to suck it up and hang in there. And so that's an important trait that I've seen from him. But having said it, like I said, I think they're going to try and add a top-line forward for March 7th. The other thing is, I think, you know, the Senators, having survived all those games without Ullmark, you know, he's back now, I know, but the fact that they got through that stretch without really the goalie that was brought in to be the difference maker for them this year speaks, I think, glowingly of where that team is finally headed. I think they're over the hump.
Yeah.
Like, I think this year has answered a lot of questions about them. I sent you that tweet, Brian. I did that poll this week just for kicks of asking people, if it was Ottawa, Toronto in the first round, who would you pick? Now, I get it. These things aren't scientific, and you never know why people are voting a certain way. But, you know, just over 25,000 people answered, and it was 52-48 for the Senators. Now, which is,
yeah.
I didn't expect that. Now, there's probably as many Leaf haters in the hockey world as there are Leaf lovers, I would say. That's maybe part of it. But I will say, I scrolled down on my Twitter feed and looked at some of the people that were tweeting at me about the poll. There were a number of Leaf fans who said, I'm a Leaf fan all my life. I'm picking Ottawa. I don't know what to make of that. Like, I think that despite a new coach, despite all the changes on the blue line, you guys mentioned Tanev's having an unbelievable year. This is still a market here in Toronto that will not believe until they see it, I think.
And they shouldn't. How could you blame anybody? How could you possibly blame anybody? They're so scarred and gun-shy. But I'd love to see that series, man. It would be an outstanding one. And again, if it were to happen, I guess starting tonight, that's probably what we would be looking at. All right, Pierre, you're probably in Don Mills by now, I would hope. So good luck with that. Good luck with the game tonight. Go Flames, and we'll do it again soon.
Are you kidding? I'm not there yet. This is Toronto, man. Do you really think I'm there already? Come on.
I guess not.
If you're in Toronto, you're 30 minutes from Toronto.
Yeah. Very true.
All right, guys.
Good luck.
Thanks for having me.
Good luck with the Forge. All right, there he is, Pierre LeBrun, our TSN Hockey Insider. Broke my ankle, Don Mills Civitan Arena.
Oh, no.
Like, I always remember, I'm sure you're the same way, like, the really bad injuries. Like, I remember I broke my ankle there. I was young. I wasn't on the ice either. I was playing ball hockey, like foot hockey.
Oh, man.
And I broke a clean break, broke my collarbone, blew up my meniscus, like all those big ones. I'm like, I remember that. I remember that. I remember that.
I remember the second leading up to it. And, like, if you could go back in time, what you would do differently, it's, like, clear as day in my head on all those big injuries.
I remember it vividly. I was there. We were at Don Mills Arena. I wasn't even playing. I think my sister was on the ice. And I was kicking a ball, playing ball hockey or whatever in the corner. They had the little ramp there. It's an amazing old rink, great rink. And exactly that. I went and I jumped and tried to do something, and immediately it just snapped. And I was screaming in the rink, too.
Yeah. Oh, and everyone's coming over. Like,
that's it.
This kid just got hurt.
I was
a big commotion.
7 years old, 8 years old, and I was screaming because it was a clean broken ankle, just brutal.
Straight to the ER.
Yeah. And I'm sure my parents came over and were like, shut up. What the hell? What are you doing? Like, you know, they're not paying attention to me. I'm over in the corner just doing what I'm doing.
And then your ankle's the size of a balloon.
Yeah. Right into a cast, no hockey for like 6 weeks. Devastating for like a 7-year-old, 8-year-old kid.
Terrible.
Devastating.
And everyone signs your cast. It's got the gnarly smell. Yeah. I did an ankle.
The ankle's bad, man.
I did it at practice at Canlan Etobicoke playing for the Marlies. I was like 11 or 12 years old. We were doing one-on-one drills. You know, you do one-on-ones at that age. You're like, anything can happen, man. Yep. You could like lose an edge or someone takes you hard to the post. There's like a height weight discrepancy.
Yep.
Anyways, kid, good player, drops his shoulder, goes right to the net on me. We fall, but like for some reason go into the end boards.
With pace.
And I think my thinking was, let me jam my left foot down just to like get it into the ice so I can stop myself. Well, I jammed it right into the boards.
Eek. Done.
Yeah. done for the year. We won the GTHL championship. I was on the ice
Couldn't
in
play?
like crutches and a cast going out there to get
brutal.
the medal. Yeah, it was terrible, man.
Oh, that stinks.
Watching games with your like cast on.
Yeah.
You know,
Because the
everyone's
playoffs
coming
is
up.
so great in the
Oh,
GTHL.
it's
It's
the
like, I think it's a 4 out of 7, right? I think we would play that. I can't remember what our playoffs would be. Maybe it was 3 out of 5.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
Maybe 2 out of 3 in the early rounds, and then maybe as it went on. I don't remember what it was either. But
we didn't lose many games. I started going down a rabbit hole of like great city arenas that we have.
yeah,
Like Vic Village, I always like.
Vic Village is a great one.
Herb
It's a-
Carnegie was great. George Bell was great.
Yes.
Weston Arena's awesome.
Yeah.
Downsview Arena's great.
North Toronto Arena is an amazing
North
rink.
Toronto, yeah.
Yeah, an amazing
Pain
rink.
to get to when you're from like Vaughan, and you've got
Yeah.
like the 7:30 game at
Well,
North
and it's in the
Toronto.
middle of the city, right? So, yeah, you got to get off on the 401 and then go down Yonge or Avenue Road, and it's a mess.
Yeah.
It is a mess. It's a great rink, though.
Yeah.
Great rink.
Scarborough Gardens Arena.
I was there recently. So my daughter had a tournament, the Scarborough Sharks Arena. It was like the 39th. I went to Malvern. I hadn't been to Malvern in
Malvern.
forever, man.
Yeah.
I haven't been there in 30 years.
Wexford Raiders.
That's where the Raiders always had tryouts and they'd play games and stuff there. I walked in. It's the same rink. Like, it's a double rink in there,
Yeah.
right? And it was the same. You remember, like, the murals up on the
Yeah.
wall and all that? Like, I can't believe the nostalgia when you walk in there. And then we were in Scarborough Village. I'm like, I can't believe I'm in here. I haven't been in here, again, 35 years.
Yeah.
And there was another rink that
Ted
she
Reed.
had. Yeah, well, we were at Angela James on one night, which is the old Flemington, right? It's Angela James now.
See, I
That
don't know
was,
if I ever got there.
yeah, you would remember it if you went through it. It's an old barn. Lots of character in there, though.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's so many great rinks, man, and I hope they
Cool.
stay.
You got to keep. Yeah, you got to.
You got to keep them, man. They're vintage parts of the city. Do not get rid of them. Don't knock them down.
They'll never build rinks like that ever
Again.
Yeah.
Don't put up condos or anything like that. Keep the great rinks in the city.
Yeah.
You have to. All right, Dave Naylor's coming up. Super Bowl right around the corner. We'll catch up with the nail gun, start planning for that, and see where his head's at. He's been down in New Orleans all week, so we'll catch up with Dave, and our best bet still to come as well. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. All right, best bet still to come later in the hour. Leafs in action tonight. NBA trade deadline is now officially over. It was a crazy one. And now we push everything to the side, and it's Super Bowl time, right? Now it's go time for Sunday. And it has felt muted this week. Maybe it's because of all the distractions. Lots going on with the Leafs, the Raptors, the Jays have made signings. The trade deadline has been crazy in the NBA. But it hasn't had the same feel from up here. Maybe it has in New Orleans, and maybe we should go to New Orleans and get that answer. Here's our TSN football insider, Dave Naylor. Nail Gun, you've been down there for a while. You've been to a bunch of Super Bowls. Does it feel the same as it always does? Does it feel more muted? Is it a little bit more stale because it's the same matchup from a few years ago? Give us the kind of on-the-ground vibe check down there.
I think you're onto something a little bit with that. And like, it's funny. I was reading today about how the NBA, dropped its trade deadline this week as a retaliatory strike for the NFL claiming Christmas Day. So, which makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think it has been to some degree. And look, I always have trouble with these questions evaluating a Super Bowl week, on a Thursday, because especially given the economics of Super Bowls, the fans don't come in and they don't spend the whole week here. And there's actually not that much for the fans to do during the week. And we've done the flybys on Bourbon Street and things like that. But one of the things that struck me, guys, is I haven't really seen a lot of people decked out in team colors yet. Like, even though this is early in the week, you'd expect to see, swaps of Chiefs fans and Eagles, all this. I'm just seeing like kind of normal New Orleans party scenes, so far. So we'll see what happens on the weekend. But there doesn't seem to be that kind of, that presence of the fans of the respective teams in the city. And I say that with the asterisk that it is, Thursday at 6:30. But, we'll see what happens this weekend.
I'm sure you're having conversations with all the other various, media members from other outlets. What's the general consensus when you guys talk about the result of this game? Is it like a formality that, it's just going to be the Chiefs, the Eagles don't have the jam to do it? Or, is there a healthy amount of people saying like this could be the Eagles?
I think there's this sense that the Eagles have a better roster and have a better team and can win this game, but probably won't. And one of the things that's been Patrick Mahomes has talked a lot about this week, and he was that the sort of quality that he values the most is winning. Obviously, he's done an incredible amount of that in his career, and talking about how he was more of a big play hunter earlier in his career. He's not really that guy. One of the things that's kind of fascinating about the Chiefs is that statistically, if you didn't know anything about their team and you looked at their roster, you'd say this is kind of an ordinary team. I mean, they're 21st on yards per play on offense, 12th on yards per play given up on defense, don't have a 1,000-yard receiver, don't have a 1,000-yard rusher. Patrick Mahomes has his lowest passing total of his career this year since he became a starter, the most sacks, and had double-digit interceptions for the fourth straight year. And yet they barely lost. I mean, they don't really have the statistical profile of a team that is dominant, even though they were absolutely dominant by their record since their last Super Bowl. So, and if you go back to the Super Bowl 2 years ago, the Eagles have already kind of lived this script, right? 2 years ago, who had the most first downs? Philadelphia. Who had the most offense? Philadelphia. Who controlled the time of possession? Philadelphia. Who won the game? Kansas City. So I think that kind of feeds into the whole thought of like the best team here might be Philadelphia, but when it comes to winning games, hence, Exhibit A, the 17 consecutive one-score games, they're 17-0. That's, I think, it's that X factor that none of us can define that still has people leaning Kansas City.
Yeah, and that's another part of, I think, the build-up, Dave, is it's just so tough to look past Kansas City winning. It's not that it can't happen. That's why you play the games. Obviously, Philly's a really good team, and they should be comfortable in this because they've been to the Super Bowl before.
Yeah.
But it's like going into a movie theater and it feels like you know the ending. You know the script before you even watch it.
The word that has been applied to them so often, Brian, is inevitable. Right? And we tend to focus on Mahomes because, it's kind of indelibly linked to the way they play offense and the kind of plays that they pull out of the bag at the critical moments. But let's just use their victories over the Bills alone over the last 2 years. How did they win 2 weeks ago? It was the defense that stopped Buffalo on a drive on which the Bills could have won the game. They had Josh Allen with a ball in his hands with 3 minutes left on the 30 and all their timeouts. Go back to last year, their elimination game against the Bills. How did they win there? It was Josh Allen, the ball in his hands, down 3, enough time. They get into field goal range and miss a field goal. And even go to the AFC Championship game last year at Baltimore. I mean, that game was 17-10, right? So it's, these clutch plays, these abilities to win we make it all about Mahomes and the offense, but there are lots of examples of their defense rising at the right moment as well. So I think, and to factor in the special teams, block field goal, every side of the ball has been clutch in those moments. That's how you get to 17-0 in one-score games.
I think a lot of people can conceptualize what a Chiefs win would look like. What would an Eagles win have to look like? Would it be a close game? Would they have to blow it out to the point where the Chiefs don't have a chance of getting back in it? Is that even possible? Like, if you had to draw up a reasonable outcome for the Eagles winning this game, what exactly would that look like for you?
The Chiefs on run defense can't stop Saquon Barkley, which, by the way, their run defense has been trending in the wrong direction since about the middle of the season. And they didn't exactly, shut James Cook down last week, and didn't have to shut him down on the final drive when he didn't have a touch. So I would think it's the Eagles are able to run the ball effectively. Saquon Barkley gets, 2 or 3 explosive plays, and Philadelphia wins the turnover battle. There you go. That's the formula for an Eagles win right there.
Okay. All right. Sign me up. I kind of want to see it. I mean, I'm conflicted here because the greatness of the Chiefs and the dynasty and all that kind of stuff, like long term, I probably want to be able to say I lived through a three-peat. I saw a three-peat, sure. Right? Like I do think this is a classic example of that, Dave. And you're a sports, historian and junkie like sure. All of us are. Like, it feels like on a micro level in the moment, I'm pulling for Philly because I don't need to see Kansas City. I've seen that before. I kind of want to see Barkley get it. But I think if you pull it out and you think of it from a macro perspective and you think what would be a better talking point 15, 20 years down the line, it's certainly a Chiefs win.
well, something that you've never seen before in all the years we've been watching football, right? You've never seen a team go 3 in a row. And again, same quarterback, 3 years in a row. First, again, he'll tie Terry Bradshaw and Joe Montana with 4, but they never won 3 in a row. Here's the other thing, and this kind of goes back to your original question, Brian, about the kind of meh reaction to the Super Bowl, right? You've got the whole Chiefs thing, right? Which, Mahomes overexposure and the Taylor Swift thing and all, and the officials, it's all part of that, the anybody but Chiefs thing. But here's the other thing. Do you know anyone whose second favorite team is the Philadelphia Eagles? Right? Eagles are kind of your either in or out kind of team, right?
True.
So
very true.
It's not a quick pivot for people to the Eagles as a rallying team if that's not their team, ordinarily. So I think that's another part of this is that they're not exactly a team that a lot of people have a team in their back pocket. Well, when I don't root for this, I root for that team. The Eagles aren't that team for a lot of people.
It's a great point. And like if the Lions were in this situation, they would be a huge favorite, right? Everyone loves the story of the sad sack Lions, and here they go, and Dan Campbell's done it. That would have been the difference in terms of the component. If you put the Lions in here, and I know they weren't even in the NFC Championship game, but if it were the Lions versus the Chiefs or the Bills versus the Eagles, it's totally different. The whole thing changes.
Absolutely. That whole dynamic, that understanding of the fan base, the belief in the kind of the build that it's taken to get here and burst in the bubble, everybody can jump on board with that. It's funny, on the Lions for a moment. I was walking around today, coming back from the Chiefs availability, going back to the hotel. And I was walking down the street, and I looked up on the sidewalk, and there was this couple, I'm going to put them kind of in their early 70s, and they were dressed head to tail in that Lions Hawaii blue, right? They had the hats. Mm-hmm. They had the T-shirts. They had, everything going. And I wanted to say to them, I'm sorry. I know when you booked this looked really good. But it was almost like a reminder of what we all thought was going to happen until, 2.5 weeks ago.
I know. It is. It's such a bummer that they're not there, or the Bills for that matter. And the Bills were on the doorstep. Detroit never got out of their own way. They didn't win a playoff game.
You talk about people not being there, fans wouldn't be there right now. If the Bills were in, people would be going through tables today.
Yes.
Yesterday and the day before.
No, that's a great point, Frankie. I cannot believe. Like I said, I'm me. I've been around the city. I've been walking around going parts. I am not seeing great swaths of fans of either of these teams. You're right. If this was Bills territory, this place would be painted in red, white, and blue on every corner and every bar. There'd be businesses catering.
Dude,
to
they'd
Bills
call in the
Mafia,
National Guard. They'd call in the military and say, the Bills fans, it's Monday. They're here. We need military support.
Yeah. Too much.
Yeah. The military is here, just the Bills fans aren't.
Well, exactly. They got half of it, right? They were prepared for it, too. They were booking for the Bills. They were fully prepared for the Bills, and the Bills just didn't punch the ticket.
No question.
So what is I guess we'll get you out of here on do you have a prediction for us, Dave? How do you see this playing out?
I've watched this so many times, and I'm going to kind of go to where Frankie was asking me, what would it take, for an Eagles win? I think if the Eagles win, they've got to win by more than one score. It's got to be one of those games where we all walk out kind of with our jaws dropped and, can't believe what we saw. If it comes down to the wire, I just don't know how Kansas City doesn't win. And I think there's, besides to just kind of throw up your hands and go, well, they always win. One of the players I was talking to this week during the availability brought up the point is that when you've played in more types of games like that than anybody else, that's an edge. That's an edge. You've been there. You've done it. You've proven it time and time again. So unless we see something really unforeseen, I'm not going against the Chiefs. Yeah, I think we're going to have to live with it all. And it's kind of been their signature. The signature of their season has been the close win in the clutch. It's the way they beat the Eagles 2 years ago, and I bet it's the way they beat them again.
Yep, that kind of feels like the way it's going to play out. I hear you, Dave.
We'll try something better there.
Yeah, no, listen, it's 100% reasonable, and it's very, very difficult to argue against. But that's why they play the game. We'll find out starting at around 6:30 on Sunday night. Enjoy yourself down there, Dave. Thank you for doing this.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. Have a great show.
Dave Naylor joining us here from New Orleans. And, listen, the play is probably Kansas City. I have been making my case for Philadelphia. I have been making my case against the Chiefs three-peating all year.
You don't want to see this.
Well, again, as I said, I think I do. I think my future self wants to see it. I want to be able to say I got to see that happen.
Yeah.
Like as a sports fan, without a dog in the fight, I'm not a fan of either team. The idea of seeing it would be amazing. But what I've been going against all year is that history tells you just can't do it. And someone's going to get these guys at some point. And I thought the Bills would. Thought maybe the Ravens would if they were in that situation. It didn't happen. And now it's down to one team. And
you put your trust into Nick Sirianni to
and
do
it's
it.
very difficult to do.
It's just
very difficult to do.
We've done a lot of shows together over the course of the football season. I would say your level of trust in Nick Sirianni, like 3 out of 10.
Yeah, it's not very high.
3 out of 10.
And especially when you compare it and contrast it to Andy Reid on the other side, it's not good. It's concerning, but there have been shocks in the past.
Do we think, speaking of props, do we get the Sirianni tears during the national anthem again?
Is it possible for him to replicate that? Who's singing the anthem this year? I
don't know.
I don't know that either.
Yeah. Who?
Batiste?
I don't know who that is.
All right. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Maybe Sirianni will give us a repeat of that. Possible. Someone generally does cry during the anthem.
That'll be a
Super
talking
Bowl.
point, though. Why did he cry, 2 years ago?
Yep.
Why did he cry 2 years ago but not this year?
Well, if they win and no crying, then maybe there's a direct correlation there.
Yeah.
All right, we'll come back with our best bets, powered by FanDuel, and we'll tee up Leafs Seattle again. OverDrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN+. All right, today's best bets are powered by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Auston Matthews has not played against Seattle a lot in his career because they just haven't been around for a long time, but when he does, he scores. He loves scoring in Seattle. Matthews' anytime goal scorer tonight over the number tonight. I think the Leafs, they've hit a heater here. Like their offense is starting to come alive. Their power play is really come alive. Marner back in the lineup, back quarterbacking PP1 tonight.
Yeah. They want that to work. The 5 forwards thing, they're committed to.
I see. My thought on that, let me finish this read. Today's best bets powered by FanDuel. Live same-game parlays are now available for every NHL game. On the FanDuel Sportsbook app, please play responsibly, 18+, physically located in Ontario. We talked about it earlier, like Domi, you got to find a way to get him going. Morgan Riley, you got to get him going. Riley was on PP1 and it worked the other night.
Also worked in Edmonton.
I know it did. They scored twice and Mitch was playing there. I'm not even saying you take Marner out, but it's like, I got to find a way to get Mitch, like Morgan Riley feeling good about things.
Yeah.
You know?
And he did. It looked like he did. Yeah, I think with Mitch, like they want to have the net front presence, right? I think that's the thing that is first and foremost. So I don't necessarily think having Mitch at the top as opposed to Riley, they lose the big bomb of a shot because they just didn't have it in the first place.
Yeah.
Everything's coming around the front of the net there.
That's clearly what they're trying to do. Yeah, create some traffic. Nice. The goal he scored in Edmonton was on the power play. It just basically batted home a rebound.
Isn't it kind of weird, though? We're talking about a power play with Nylander, Matthews, Marner. We'll throw Tavares in, but let's keep him out for now. And we're saying got to score like in the net front mouth area. And it's like, well, that's nice.
That's Matthew Nyes is the cornerstone of the power play.
Right. So like Nyes is the guy on the power play.
Gotta have
by that thinking.
Gotta have some more cowbell.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see what comes of it tonight on TSN 4, 10 p.m. See if the O-Dog, Morty Seinfeld, can make it through.
Dude, he better be so refreshed after that nap.
I can tell you what he's doing right now.
Watching golf.
Yeah, he's sitting at home watching the Golf Channel. He's watching the Waste Management right now, and Scheffler's on the course, and he's watching him play golf.
Yeah. That's exactly what's happening. He went under the sheets, watched golf, and then he's just going to get up and drive here.
Yeah, that's what he's doing.
I love it.
90 minutes, and he was good for 90. He was on his game.
Oh, he's going to be on fire on the panel, too. Yeah. I saw the quiz answers already.
Okay.
He's going to be fired up.
There you go. Yeah. Little rest, watching Scheffler out there playing at the Waste Management.
Yeah.
And then he's in for the panel tonight.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, Frankie, enjoy it.
Hey, buddy.
Thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
As always. There he is, Frankie Corrado. Thanks to everyone behind the scenes for helping out. We appreciate it. Everyone for tuning in today. TV, radio, podcast, web. We appreciate that. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy the games tonight. We're back tomorrow at...
Chiefs make it a 3-peat, 4 p.m.
Ooh, we'll chat then.